Hey, a quick pre-program note to the parents out there. Today's show is on chastity, and we are going to be a little bit more direct than usual. And so you might want to give this show a listen through before you have your young children listen to it and decide for yourself if you think this is suitable for your children. Greetings to the brightest audience in the country, and welcome to the Dominic Enyart Show. Today is part 2 of our series on chastity. Chastity is the Christian virtue of sexual morality. And if you are chaste, then you are sexually moral. But if you are unchaste, then you are sexually immoral. And the Christian rule for sex is either total devotion and faithfulness to a partner in marriage, or else total abstinence. Now, needless to say, this is not very popular, and especially many non-Christians have this idea that Christians are kind of stuck up, boring people because, chastity, that does not sound very fun to the world at large. But as we discussed, the Bible and Christianity are extremely pro-body, pro-sex, as long as it is within certain parameters. And how Christianity actually offers the real thing, whereas modern culture offers a more cheap, pathetic substitute of the real thing. And so we are attempting to build a bridge over the gap between the secular world and Christians. And at the very least, I hope to help non-Christians understand why Christians find chastity so important. And at the very most, perhaps I can convince some non-Christians that you should begin to practice chastity yourself. And hey, it is almost the new year, and so with it being 2023, New Year's resolutions, this might be a good time to try something new, something fun with the Christian virtue of chastity. Now, yesterday, we began the discussion by saying that God wants us to be chaste, and that is the primary reason that we should be chaste. But then, of course, non-Christians do not agree with that, as very often they don't believe in God at all, or they don't believe in the God of the Bible. And so what we're doing is we're trying to give some examples of why it is that Christians think why God might want us to be chaste. What are God's reasons for this? Because God doesn't just arbitrarily decide, hey, you should do something. He has good reasons for saying what he does. And so we are beginning to look at the Christian's perspective on why God wants us to be chaste. And as we saw, being unchaste, say, lusting after random girls walking down the street, watching a lot of pornography, premarital sex, right? Shacking up with a girlfriend, participating in hookup culture and one-night stands, stuff like that. Being unchaste, those things, those slowly burn out your ability to fall in love. And God, he was an awesome designer, and he made the sexual union between one man and one woman for life. And God's plan for marriage, if it is followed to a T, it will be better than anything else that we as humans could come up with, anything that hookup culture could ever produce. And that makes sense, right? One man and one woman. Imagine all the feelings that people have over their lives, right? All the romantic feelings that people have over the course of their entire lives. It's poured out over so many different people that they date and that they sleep with and that they're physical with over the course of their lives. It's poured over 6, 7 different people. Imagine if instead of that, over the course of their lives, they poured all of their heart directly into one person who they fully invested themselves in, fully invested their lives, their emotions, and everything into. And then imagine if that person returned that and then fully invested themselves back into the other. And imagine the union that would form. Imagine the close bond that would form, rather than, if they had poured their hearts out into, half a dozen different people over the course of 70 years. And that union, that bond, it would be, it'd be unlike anything else in the world. Whereas, so that is kind of God's plan for marriage, is for you to have this one really special, awesome bond. Whereas, hookup culture wants, a lot of different lesser, less deep, less connection, a lot more lesser bonds. And the lesser bonds, that's not the real thing. Marriage in its fullness as God intended, that is the real thing. That is the bond that is worth fighting for. And God's plan is worth fighting for. Hookup culture is not. Hookup culture is merely a cheap substitute for the real thing. You will hear me say that a lot. And God's plan and marriage, God's plan for marriage and hookup culture, those are two different, mutually exclusive things. You cannot participate in hookup culture all throughout high school, all throughout college, graduate, get out completely unscathed, and then get married without any problems. That is simply not possible. Being sexually immoral, sex, pornography, that has a price tag, and it has a very steep price tag. And right, if you're doing that for the first 25 years of your life, if you're just being promiscuous, if you're watching a lot of pornography, for the first 25 years of your life, you are going to get some hefty emotional baggage from that. That is simply unavoidable, which a lot of people will deny that. They will wrongly deny that. They'll say, oh, no, I don't have that. But then it will come to something that is, physical, something physical that will happen from that, which that you cannot deny. That is actually undeniable. There are physical consequences, that we discussed yesterday, which you cannot deny that type of lifestyle will give you. A very clear example of that would be an STD. You cannot deny getting an STD, especially that. There are a lot of other problems that come from that lifestyle, which certainly are going to do a little bit of damage, but an STD is probably the most undeniable of all of them. Regardless, being sexually immoral, what that does is that burns out your ability to fall in love. And we saw that God, he designed sex, right? He designed being physical, and God designed that as a tool used to form a bond between two people. It's a tool which bonds two people together. But that tool follows the law of diminishing returns. And when it is used on different people, and the more and more people that it's used on, the less and less effective it becomes at its job. It's like a stripped screw, right? It was improperly used so many times that it now no longer serves its function. It doesn't work anymore. Now, there are some people who say, being physical, that doesn't actually build romantic bonds. That doesn't build romantic connections. And those people are exclusively people who have been extremely promiscuous. They are, and they are correct that with them, being physical, it does not help them build emotions. They are correct in their own specific, unique case. And that's because they have been physical so frequently that they actually have, in large part, burnt out their ability to fall in love. They have ruined that tool which God has given them. And if someone is extremely chaste, that's hard to find in 2022, but if someone is extremely chaste and they practice chastity, they practice sexual morality, and they're very, intense and severe about it, and then that person is physical, they will with someone else, they will unquestionably form a bond with that person, a romantic, emotional bond with that person immediately. It's going to happen. And I guarantee you that they will be the first to say it. There is no doubt about that. When someone is very chaste and then they are physical, that will build a emotional connection with that person. But only someone who has been remarkably unchaste will ever say that being physical does not form these romantic bonds. Regardless, we covered all of that in a lot of depth yesterday. I recommend you go back and listen to that show if you haven't already. That's on kgov.com. That's on the Dominic Enyart YouTube channel. That'd be the January 27th show, 2022. But I'm just trying to stress here why it is that Christians find chastity to be so important. And I a little bit want to scare you into thinking, oh, maybe I should have been more chaste. Maybe I should start being more chaste right now. Maybe I am burning out my ability to fall in love. That should scare you. I would hope it does. I know it certainly did scare me, and that fear is something that made me want to change. And I am so thankful that I did have that fear in my life. And if there's one thing I could do to better your life, it might be to help instill that fear in you. And so chastity, it helps to form romantic bonds later on in life. Chastity also helps to form an extremely deep level of trust between married couples. And why is that? Well, think of how often you hear of, oh, so-and-so cheated on so-and-so. Oh, this person was hiding such and such a pornography habit from their spouse. And it's always such a disaster. And because of how common and how frequent sexual immorality is, trust, it can be very hard to form, right? How can you trust that your spouse is not watching pornography, right? That's something that it's a serious question that needs a serious answer. You can't just throw it to the wind and just, hope for the best. It needs a serious answer. And just one time sleeping with someone else, just one time watching porn, just one night of emotions taking control, that can ruin 10 years of marriage. That can ruin 10 years of marriage. Just one night, one spouse decides to cheat on their other because, they're in a fight or whatever it is, and then an opportunity presents itself, the emotions are there, and then you ruin 10 years of marriage, 20 years of marriage. And so think of how hard that is, and think of the level of trust you would build with someone. And let's make this scenario. Let's say that you are engaged to somebody, you're going to get married to them, and you have this just such strong, passionate emotions toward them, and they have those same emotions back towards you. And then they say, I have such a strong, emotional connection with you, but I have an even stronger commitment to having a healthy marriage and to keeping the marriage bed holy, and to that I think we should not be together until we are married. And they say, hey, Hebrews 13:4 that teaches the marriage bed must be kept holy. So I'm going to resist the temptation to be with you, and I'm going to keep it holy, and I'm not going to sleep with you only because I have these strong emotions that are telling me to do that. But I'm going to wait until marriage because this is something that is for marriage. It's like if you go through that with someone and they tell that to you, what does that teach you about that person? Well, it should teach you that if you get married to that person and your spouse is ever in a situation where, say someone is trying to come on to them, trying to get with them, you will know that you can trust them in that situation, because in those situations, they have already shown that when there is intense emotion involved, they will have already devoted themselves to purity in marriage. They will have built a track record with you of not being ruled by emotion, of not being controlled by emotion. And they will have built a track record that you were there to watch. You saw the entire thing as it was being built. They've built this track record of not falling into temptation. And that will give you such an incredible gift in your marriage, that no, this person will not cheat on me just because, there was, so-and-so was mad at the other person and then an opportunity arose or whatever it is. This person is so committed to your marriage that you can trust them. And sadly, that is just not something that a lot of people have nowadays. It's not too common that there's just this incredible, unfaltering trust that you can have in your partner. And definitely seeing someone avoid that temptation, seeing someone avoid, overcoming their emotions and denying themselves something in like this utter heat of passion, in this moment of passion, if they are able to deny themselves in that moment, then that goes a very long way to building trust that that they will deny themselves in other more severe moments later on down the line. Now, of course, when you trust someone like that, you should still avoid situations where there will be such a high level of temptation. You should avoid situations where someone would come on to you, right? You don't want to, if you're married, just because you were chaste up until marriage, that doesn't mean you should start going to bars alone on Friday nights. But if you've been practicing chastity for a long while, it is easy to tell which situations will and won't place temptations on you. And because, knowing how to avoid temptation, that is 80% of the battle with chastity. But regardless, that is something that if you are chaste with your, fiance before you get married to them, that is something that will show you, hey, they know how to avoid these situations which place temptation on you. They know how to overcome some temptation if it's presented. And so that is something that really does form a really special bond of trust that not a lot of marriages have nowadays, and that is something that is really special. But now, that is off topic. Of course, remaining pure until marriage will show someone how much you trust them. Right? If someone comes on to you on the first date and then they ask if you trust them, you are going to think, well, no, of course I don't trust you. You tried to sleep with me on the first date. You'd probably try to speak with, a handful of other people the first time you meet them as well. So no, of course, I do not trust you. Now, at this point, critics, people who will want to sleep around all the time, people who will want to watch a lot of porn, they might try to attack Christian chastity and say something like, well, if you really want to love your wife in the future, then you should know what you want. You should be experienced. And I hate when people say this. I hate this so much. It's so just gross and nasty. But they'll try to attack Christian chastity and say, hey, Christians, they're just, repressing their natural desires. And they'll actually try to flip the script here against the Christians. And they'll try to, in some convoluted way, say that being promiscuous before marriage will actually help the marriage to thrive, which is, it's insane. It's lunacy. They are simply desperately looking for any way to hold on to their lifestyle with knowing full well that it's insane. To say that being chaste, that it represses these desires, it is so ironic that they would say that. It is ironic to such a remarkable degree for two main reasons. Reason number one, as we've already covered, being chaste, that means you have a desire for the real thing. You have a desire for the real thing. You want real sex in real marriage in all its glory in a way that honors and glorifies God. You want it how God designed it. But being unchaste, on the other hand, being unchaste means that you are willing to settle for a cheap substitute of the real thing. Number two, for something to be repressed. Here, actually, let me pull this up here. Let me read this. This is from verywellmind.com. This is a psychology website. And under repression, it says, what is repression? Repression is the unconscious blocking of unpleasant emotions, impulses, memories, and thoughts from your conscious mind. First described by Sigmund Freud, the purpose of this defense mechanism is to try to minimize feelings of guilt and anxiety. However, while repression might initially be effective at calming these difficult emotions, it can lead to greater anxiety down the road. Freud believed that repression could lead to psychological distress. And so, first of all, right off the bat there, we see unconscious blocking. And chastity, at least for men, I can't speak for women on this, but I've talked to a lot of men about this at great length, and I feel very confident that I can give a extremely accurate representation of 99.9% of men when I say that chastity is very difficult to practice. It does not come easily, and if there are any people who have success stories with chastity, it took a very high level of determination. It took a very significant amount of prayer and hundreds, well, I shouldn't say hundreds, thousands of conscious decisions. No, I'm going to be chaste. I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to go over there. Literally thousands of times. It is a very intense struggle. And if you just try to, live and let live and just see where your subconscious takes you, you are going to be unchaste immediately. It's just going to be basically automatic, and it takes a lot of effort to be chaste. I know 100% it cannot be an unconscious blocking. There's a Christian ministry, which I haven't looked to in too much depth myself. I've heard a lot of really good things about it, but it's called Every Man's Battle. And I love that title because this is really, chastity. It's every man's battle. Every man does face this challenge, and that is because it is so deeply rooted within us that every man will tell you to resist this temptation. It has to be a conscious decision. It can't be an unconscious, oops, I didn't lust after someone. No, it has to be a very conscious decision that you have to consciously ask the Lord for help with, that you have to actively be, asking those around you for help with. And then this unconscious blocking, it is certainly not that. And then this says it is a blocking of unpleasant emotions, impulses, memories, and thoughts from your conscious mind. This, again, is the exact opposite of chastity. Chastity is saying, hey, there are things that are very pleasant. They are very fun. There's a reason why a lot of people do this. They're very tempting, but I am going to delay gratification. I am going to I'm going to stop these thoughts from ruling my mind. And, just because they're fun and pleasant, I'm not going to allow them to take control over me. That's what chastity is. And so resisting temptation, blocking out unpleasant emotions, those are two very different things, right? Resisting temptation and blocking out unpleasant emotions. Those are almost opposite things, very different things. And then it says here on this website that repression, while repression might initially be effective at calming these difficult emotions, it can lead to greater anxiety down the road. Again, chastity could not be any more opposite from that. It is delayed gratification. Initially, it is very unpleasant. It is not fun. Chastity is not a, extremely fun, edgy, exciting thing. It's actually quite the opposite. It actually has been shown to cause your emotions in many ways to increase and to become more significant, to become more severe, because you are, you're holding yourself back a little bit. You're, you are blocking some of these things from coming in. But it is practiced in hopes of reducing anxiety later on down the road. And so anxiety that your spouse might cheat on you. Hey, if she was being chaste when you were engaged before marriage, that anxiety will be lessened. Your spouse has anxiety that you might cheat on her. Same thing. If you were chaste before marriage with her, that will lessen that anxiety. Interestingly enough, when we resist our sexual desires, we learn a great deal more about ourselves than if we were to indulge in them. C.S. Lewis, he actually wrote something, not exactly on chastity, but about that concept. And he said in his book, Mere Christianity, "No man knows how bad he is until he has tried very hard to be good. A silly idea is current that good people do not know what temptation means. This is an obvious lie. Only those who try to resist temptation know how strong it is. After all, you find out the strength of the German army by fighting against it, not by giving in. You find the strength of a wind by trying to walk against it, not by lying down. A man who gives in to temptation after 5 minutes simply does not know what that temptation would have been like an hour later. That is why bad people, in one sense, know very little about badness. They have lived a sheltered life by always giving in. We never find out the strength of the evil impulse inside us until we try to fight it. And that's exactly right. And that is exactly the same with our sexual desires. We will never know the strength of them until we try to resist them. If we just give in to them, we won't learn anything about them. And so definitely resisting your sexual urges will teach you a lot more about them. But here's the part that confuses a lot of people, and I'd like to dive into this a little bit here. Like any appetite, when you indulge your sexual appetite, it grows, it changes, and it changes very rapidly. And it's not just that you are, learning new things about yourself, it's that you actually are changing. And depending on the experiences that you're going through, it will either be a healthy change, say in marriage, or an unhealthy change, say with pornography. In fact, it has been shown that men, and I'm not sure why this is, but it has been shown that men, the more men view pornography, which is very unhealthy, the more violent in nature their desires become. And so when the hookup culture teaches that you are merely learning about yourself, that is untrue. The hookup culture is lying to you because you have the power to change yourself. You have the power to control who you are and what your desires will be like, especially if you turn to God and ask Him for help with that. That is not something that you are just, you're set this way and there's nothing that can be done to change it and you just have to hope that you learn something good about yourself. It is actually a choice that you can make. Either I'm going to be healthy or I'm going to be, unhealthy. That is a choice that you can make. That is a power that is within your grasp. And it is a lie that you are merely discovering yourself. That is just a flat out lie. That is untrue, especially in your younger years. In your younger years, when you are so full of development and potential, you're not discovering yourself. You are building yourself. You are creating what you will be. And now, with resisting these sexual temptations, the hookup culture says that you're repressing yourself. They say resisting is the same as repressing yourself. Ironically, however, I think it is the hookup culture which causes more repression. And so we read that there. Repression is the unconscious blocking of unpleasant emotions, impulses, memories, and thoughts from your conscious mind. And it's like, well, what does that sound like? What does that sound like? Well, that sounds exactly like hookup culture. There are those guys who say, no, being physical, that doesn't cause romantic bonding. It's like, it sounds like being physical is supposed to cause that romantic bonding, but what would the word for that be? It's almost like that's being repressed inside of you. You're not letting that come through because you have burnt out your ability to fall in love. You have burnt out that ability. It is, what else does this say here? It is a defense mechanism to try and minimize feelings of guilt and anxiety. And so guilt and anxiety, it's like, boom, how more clear of an example could you want than that? Watching porn, that has been shown to increase feelings of anxiety to a tremendous degree. It's right. Soft porn plays hard ball. It's not to a minor degree. It is to a significant degree. And hookup culture, it tries desperately to repress that and to lie about that and say, oh, that's not true. Porn doesn't do that. But porn totally does do that. It's basically undeniable. And, the hookup culture, the lies that they're spewing, they couldn't be any more untrue. And they're trying to repress that anxiety that porn so naturally brings about. And if you watch pornography, you should feel some level of guilt about that. You should feel guilty about that. You are seeing something that you should not have seen. You are seeing something which was not meant for you. You were taking something which did not belong to you. What you are seeing, that should only be seen by that woman's future husband. It's not meant for you. It's wrong, and right, it hurts so many people, and you are deriving pleasure from that. You should feel guilty about that, but hookup culture lies and says, oh no, that's normal. That's normal. You shouldn't feel guilty about that. It's like, talk about repression. That is textbook repression. Reducing feelings of guilt. I remember I was 16. I was talking to a friend of mine, a friend from hockey who, the hockey crowd, I don't recommend being around them. I recommend getting away from them. I was pretty strict on myself of getting away from them after I realized how much they were hurting my spiritual life. But I was 16 and I was talking to a friend from hockey, and we were talking about porn. At the time, I knew porn was bad. He thought porn was fine. And I remember at the time he had a girlfriend, and I was trying to convince him that porn, it was bad for him and that it was hurting her. And he was kind of complaining and arguing and saying like, well, why would this bother a girl? Because he was taught by hookup culture, guys watch porn, girls have to be okay with it. And so he was kind of annoyed at this idea that his girlfriend might be bothered by it. And so I asked him, I said, dude, would it bother you? Would it bother you if you found out that she was watching porn? And he said, oh, I would hate that. I would hate that. And so I asked him, I was like, why would you hate that? And I kid you not, he goes, I would hate that so much because that would make me feel like I'm not good enough for her. And like she needed more than just me and I wasn't enough for her. Oh no. Oh, Dom, I messed up. And so he realized like mid sentence that he had been fed this lie. He had been taught by hookup culture that it's completely normal and that guys will do that and girls shouldn't be bothered by that. He recognized that, and he recognized he was taught he should not feel guilty about this when he totally should feel guilty about it. And thankfully, he did recognize that he was hurting her, and he owned up to that, which is really neat. That is really impressive. I mean, props to him. He's just some, hockey worldly guy. He's not like a bastion of Christian morals, but he recognized that, which is really, really cool. So it seems clear to me that it is the promiscuous bunch, it is the hookup culture which has repressed their desire. It's them who are repressing the desires, not the chaste Christians, especially because we should have a desire for the real thing. We should have a desire for sex and marriage as God intended it. And it is them they have repressed that desire and they have broken that desire. And so it's not those who are in the hookup culture who are saying, hey, delayed gratification. Let's delay our gratification. That's what we need. This is going to help us later on down the road. That's not what they're saying. It's not them who are saying that. They are the ones who are saying, hey, let's throw caution to the wind. Let's sleep with whoever we want. Let's watch whatever porn we want, whenever we want. We'll be fine. It's like, talk about repression. That is textbook repression, right? There is that famous old saying, if you come to a fence in the field and you don't know why it's there, don't tear it down. Don't tear it down if you don't know why that fence is there to begin with, right? And that makes sense, right? The fence, it could be holding back a dangerous animal. You should at least figure out why a fence is there before tearing it down. Play it safe, so to speak. And hookup culture has done the exact opposite. The sexual revolution has done the exact opposite. They showed up, they saw, hey, there's all these restrictions about sex. There's all these rules about sexual conduct. And they said, what, we need to tear down this fence. We need to get rid of these rules, get rid of these guidelines. We need the sexual revolution. and they were completely unaware of the beast that they just released on the world. And of course, since the dawn of the sexual revolution, marriage rates have plummeted, divorce rates have skyrocketed, healthy families are being torn apart left and right, infidelity has gone through the roof. Sexual deviance is advertised as something we should be proud of. STDs are all too common. You're right, monkeypox is a very, recent example of that. Then I'll leave you guys with just this last point. We're almost out of time here. This claim that Christians are repressing their natural desires. The hookup culture likes to claim that sex is nothing to be ashamed about. And they could mean two things by that. One, they could mean that sex in its proper context is nothing to be shamed about. It's a normal biological function. And if that's what they mean, then I agree with them, and so does the Bible. But I don't think that's what they mean. Rather, I think they mean the other thing, which is that sex in its current state, as it is currently viewed, is nothing to be ashamed of. That, hookup culture and giving in to your every desire is nothing to be ashamed of. And I think this is what they mean when they say that. And when they say this, I think that they are very wrong. As I said earlier, when we indulge our desires, they grow. And they will either grow in a healthy manner or an unhealthy manner. And over the last 100 years or so, as a society, our desires have grown in one of the most unhealthy ways possible, in that every time there is a desire, even if it is a bad desire, we're taught, that's healthy. You got to just explore that. And so it is not what that has done is it has created desires in us, which are not natural desires, and they are perverted desires. And so with Christians, with chastity, it is not natural desires which we are resisting. It is sexual perversion which we are resisting. And sexual perversion, that is not a natural desire. That's why it is called a perversion. It is something that was once natural, once good, that has been perverted, right? And it has been ruined. Those are synonymous. Perverted and ruined, those are synonymous. And so chastity, it actually supports that natural desire, right? We talked yesterday about how the first command in the Bible is go have sex. That's the first command in the Bible. And chastity recognizes there are these desires, and it says, hey, that's good. Grow that desire, but grow it in a healthy manner. Grow it in the way that God intended it. Don't go off on your own and try and figure it out on your own. That's not going to work. And then chastity, what else it says? It says, but hey, that perversion over there, that weird, bad thought that came up into your head, deny that. That is not okay. That is not okay. There are certain parameters, and we have to be inside these parameters, and then things will be good. But stuff outside of those parameters, those perverted things, those are not okay. And so hookup culture says the exact opposite. Hookup culture says that, no, there's no such thing as a bad sexual desire. Many advocates of hookup culture are now saying that even the desire for children is not inherently bad. They'll say it's okay to have that desire as long as you don't act on it. And it's like, geez, what a disaster that hookup culture is bringing us to. And I know not everyone in hookup culture says that, but there are very prominent voices which are saying that, and that's why we hear about this whole thing with you can't call them pedophiles anymore. Now you have to call them MAPs, minorly attracted persons. And it's like, that is the deviance which hookup culture brings you to. Because when you don't draw a firm line in the sand, you just keep pushing it back further and further and further, and there is no bottom to that abyss. So those are kind of your two options, right? There's the left, the secular world, the non-Christians, the people who hate chastity, and they say that perverted desires are okay. And then there is, Christians who are chaste who say perverted desires are not okay. And so remember that word perverted, that's synonymous with the word ruined. And so hookup culture says it is okay when things are ruined. It is okay when things are bad. And then Christian culture, chastity, says it's not okay when things are ruined. It's not okay when things are bad. And so those are your two options. Those are the two, mindsets that you can choose between. You can choose between saying it's okay when things are bad or it's not okay when things are bad. And to me, that seems like a very, very clear choice. And so again, chastity, it does not tell us to repress our natural desires. It tells us to grow them in a healthy manner and to destroy the unhealthy, unnatural, perverted desires, which is what we should do, of course. Hey, that is going to do it for me here today. I am out of time. I hope that this series is beginning to show why chastity is such an important issue. I am very passionate about this issue. I would encourage you guys to, if you do not take chastity seriously, to start doing so. And if you are, perhaps you're not a Christian, maybe at least, it's New Year's, maybe try it for a few months, see if it has an effect on you, an effect on your soul. And if it does, maybe that serves as a little piece of evidence that the advice of the Bible is maybe a little bit smarter than you give it credit for. So maybe perform this test. Let me know how it goes. And I don't want to hear about any of you people who say that, oh, I tried chastity and it doesn't work. No, this test, it needs to be a new test. It needs to be a test from now into 2023. Those old tests don't count. I will see you guys next week. In the meantime, do not forget to subscribe, like this video, hit the notification bell for more. That all goes such a long way to helping us out. And we're still in our baby stages on the YouTube channel, but we're trying to grow. We saw some pretty big growth this week, which was out of the ordinary, which is cool. And so excited, happy for that. We're trying to grow. And so your support is definitely appreciated. By the way, make sure to check out our video, which was just released on my YouTube channel, the Dominic Enyart YouTube channel. We released for free. You had to pay for it for all these years, but it is now free. Mount Moriah, Evidence for the Resurrection of Jesus Christ. An absolutely stunning video that is a full-length documentary made by the late, great Pastor Bob Enyart. And it has now been made it's free on YouTube. So make sure to check that out. That is, again, my YouTube channel. Hey, may the Lord bless you and may he make his face to shine upon you.